Dr. Mira Espinoza first saw the manifesto in a dim evidence vault beneath the Madrid Court of Appeals. She had been asked, unofficially, to examine a set of 46 pages delivered in a plain envelope to the Minister of Justice. No fingerprints, no return address, no digital hints, the usual puzzles that made her work as a forensic linguist feel like play. But the moment her gloved fingers touched the crisp, creme-colored vellum, she felt something that had never troubled her in a decade of expert testimony. An involuntary shiver, as if the paper were lightly exhaling. The documents lay out across a polished mahogany table like sleeping animals. Every page bore a different calligraphic flourish. Yet the lexical choices and syntactic quirks said the same writer was responsible. Still, tiny inconsistencies teased her. A flourish on a lowercase g that suddenly reversed direction. A preference for archaic Spanish pronouns that switched mid-clause. She catalogued the deviations, jotting them in her leather notebook, convinced that they were either deliberate camouflage or signs of mental derailment. The first lines read, in Gothic fountain pen ink, Yo so quien observa sus noches menta, tu suenas con sorbos de despedida. Procura escuchar las cuetas de tu pripos. I am the one who watches your nights while you dream of farewell sips. Try to listen to the cracks in your own voice. Mira whispered the phrase under her breath, then frowned. It felt addressed not to the minister, but to her. She set the thought aside to go surely, and began the real work, frequency counts, idiosyncratic punctuation, a stylistic signature that might narrow the author to one of the fringe intellectual circles of late dictatorship Spain. By midnight, she had sketched a preliminary profile. Male, late 60s, educated in pre-1975 Madrid, steeped in mystical literature. She closed her laptop, arranged the pages neatly, and locked the bundle in an archival box. As she slid the lid shut, a high violin note seemed to scrape across her inner ear. She jerked, accidentally knocking her notebook to the floor. When she stooped to retrieve it, a word she had not written glittered on the open page. Soledad. Loneliness. She stared. The ink matched her fountain pen's sepia, but she was certain, absolutely certain she hadn't penned it. She flipped through earlier pages. No extra marks. Shaking off unease, she told herself she must have scribbled the word mechanically, a note for a possible thematic cluster. She re-shelved her nerves and went home. 2 nights later, she returned to the manifesto in her university office, a narrow room walled with books and pinned student essays. She isolated a paragraph dense with metaphors of glass and salt and ran it through her lexical database. Her software flagged unusual collocations, brine of prayer, window bones, salted footsteps. Mira adjusted her reading glasses, cheeks warming with the thrill she always felt when an author's private obsession revealed itself in statistically significant patterns. Then the letters shifted. It was not a flicker of perception, nor the wavering of tired eyes. She watched, jaw slack, as ink lines melted and reformed like black mercury. Window bones slid into mirror bones. The words salted, stretched, broke, and rearranged into shattered. The sentence now read, Your shattered footsteps echo when you leave your father's voice unburied. Startled, she slapped the page shut. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She opened the sheet again. The sentence remained changed, but when she looked away to her computer screen, she saw the original text still scrolling in the scanned image, untouched. Impossible, she thought. She tested another passage, deliberately calming her breath. The manifesto spoke of statues breaking their own mirrors. She closed her eyes, inhaled memories of the cold morning her father died, and let the sorrow press at her ribcage. When she looked back, the word statues had transformed into father. Mirrors had become lungs. She tasted metal at the back of her throat. Her father, a criminal magistrate, had suffered a heart attack after years of threats from a Basque separatist cell. No one knew she had always suspected the threats were orchestrated, a convenient stressor for a man hiding cruelties, domestic and professional alike. She had never shared the suspicion aloud. Now the page seemed to know. Mira documented each shift, using her phone to film the metamorphoses. Through the lens, nothing changed. The camera captured stable, printed words. even as her naked eye watched them liquefy. She replayed the video. There she was, gasping, turning the page, but the text was ordinary, immutable. The dissonance pinched her temples until anxiety bloomed into nausea. At dawn, she drove to her childhood apartment on Calle de Atocha, parking where she could see the balcony on which her father had smoked his last cigarette. A stray cat sauntered across the hood of her car, and she thought about quantum observers, whether texts could exist differently for each witness. She rubbed sleep from her face and whispered, "I'm losing my mind, Papa. Are you pleased?" When she returned to campus, her graduate assistant Layla met her with coffee and a printout. I cross-referenced the manifesto's epigraph, "Procure escuchar las huetas," and found it quoted in an obscure poetry chapbook from 1976. The author, Sebastián Lobo, disappeared in 1982 after he was implicated in the murder of a journalist named Juliel Nigo Benavente. Case went cold. The name Benavente thudded like a fist against her sternum. She knew it from whispered family lore. Benavente had conducted investigations into police corruption. Her father served as legal counsel to one of the implicated officials. When Benavente was found bludgeoned in a printing workshop, rumors suggested evidence vanished in the magistrate's chambers. Layla continued. The manifesto's handwriting matches letters Lobo mailed from prison before charges were dropped. But Lobo's date of birth means he'd be 97 now if alive. Mira managed a professional nod and sent Leela to fetch more coffee. Alone, she reread a fresh page. This time the text morphed without warning. "You fear the story your blood knows. Find the rib that struck the typecase. Silence rots." She whispered. "Benavente's rib was fractured." The paper responded, "Letters writhing. Correct. Then finish the autopsy your father buried." She flung the sheet away. She drifted to the floor, words settling back into their previous order at least, for any observer who was not her. That night, insomnia gnawed. She dreamed of letters crawling along her veins, of punctuation marks stitching her eyelids together, of an invisible fountain pen hovering over her heart. She awoke at 4:05 a.m., drenched, and called her mother in Cadiz. "Mama, did Papa ever talk about Benavente?" Her mother's silence crackled through the line. "Your father swore never to mention that name in this house, Mira. Why drag old ghosts?" "Because one of them is writing to me," Mira said before thinking. Her mother exhaled like a deflating sail. "Sleep more, Hija. The dead use subtler messengers than paper." Mira hung up and went to the shower, letting scalding water scour her thoughts. When she opened the stall, the steam on the mirror displayed a message traced by invisible fingers. "The rib is location, not metaphor." She swiped a towel across the glass, erasing the letters, but her knees trembled. Over the following week, she performed a battery of self-checks. Ophthalmology exam, neurological imaging, psychiatric consultations, all clean. Each night she forced herself to sit with the manifesto. She found that the text's mutability tracked her emotional vectors. Anxiety invoked revelations about the murder. Sorrow summoned confessions about her father. Anger caused accusatory commands to bloom among the paragraphs. Neutral curiosity produced nothing. The paper, in effect, read her mood like biofeedback and rewrote itself accordingly. She built a procedural harness. Deep breaths, record baseline heart rate, read a passage, annotate perceived changes, cross-record with external scans. Data, her refuge. She discovered the manifesto referred to 3 specific physical sites: an abandoned typesetting workshop in Lavapiés, the archives of the now-defunct newspaper El Clarín, and the white mouth where truth gapes, which she suspected meant Benavente's gravesite. Unable to secure official warrants without sounding deranged, she went alone. The workshop's windows were boarded, but a side door hung crooked. Dust and dry ink coated everything. Mira's flashlight caught the gleam of a metal composing stick wedged behind a cabinet. She pried it free. Etched along its side, hardly visible, "Breathe the rib." She swallowed a cry. A rectangular hole had been chiseled into the wooden handle. Inside lay a sliver of bone. Her hands wanted to drop the object, Yet an invisible gravity said, "Hold." She slipped the bone fragment into a sample bag, feeling as though she had just retrieved the final Jenga block in a tower built from lies. Outside, twilight pooled between tenements. She opened her notebook to record coordinates. New words had appeared on the page. "Show me the bruise," on Madrin's tongue. Beneath the sentence, her pen without, her guidance scribbled a date, 17xi, 1971. That was the day Benavente published an expose on state-sanctioned tortures. It was also the week her father received a sudden promotion. Terror and determination braided inside her. The manifesto didn't merely rewrite, it commanded, and she understood with bone-deep certainty that disobeying would erode her sanity faster than compliance. The Clarinet archives were stored in the basement of the National Library under moldy regulations. She talked her way past a disinterested clerk, citing a fake thesis, and located the 1971 November editions. The issue from the 17th had 2 missing pages. Removal cuts were fresh, no yellowed edges. Someone had come recently. Mira's pulse raced. She turned to leave and nearly collided with a man carrying a thin attaché case. His hair was silvery and sparse, face parchment wrinkled. He blinked at her. Something feral glinted behind scholarly spectacles. "Dr. Spinoza," he said, pronouncing her name with an archaic Castilian lisp. She froze. "Do I know you?" "I am a ghost who overstayed the feast," he answered, which sounded like Lobo's style. He gestured at the stack of newspapers. "The pages you seek lie closer than you think." Then he pivoted and walked away on legs stiff as marionette sticks. She followed until the corridor ended in a locked fire door. He was gone. Back in the reading room, the microfilm reader flickered. Drawn as if by magnetism, she approached. The machine whirred to life, projecting 2 pages she hadn't cued. The missing Clarin spread. It contained a diagram of a police black site and a list of names. Her father's name appeared thrice, once as legal advisor, twice under financial beneficiaries. A red wax seal stained the margin, Benavente's trademark protest against censorship. Mira barely had time to photograph the screen before the librarian returned, scolding that the room was closing. Outside, rain drummed. She opened the manifesto beneath a street lamp. The ink shifted immediately. One more vein to open. Speak the name in daylight. Publish and let the father taste dawn. She cried out, a small, helpless sound. She was a scholar, not a crusader. But the manifesto's ultimatum pressed on her skull like a tightening vice. She imagined letters pouring out of her ears, drowning her thoughts forever. She drove to the coast that night, to her mother's quiet apartment. The sea hissed like static. Over coffee, she lay her findings on the table. Photos, bone fragment, manifesto copies, the microfilm image. Her mother stared at the evidence, tears shining. "I loved him despite the darkness," her mother murmured. "But I won't protect lies that strangle you." They composed a statement for El País, attaching images and forensic commentary. Mira's reputation ensured editors paid attention. She withheld the supernatural details. Empirical facts were heavy enough. The article scheduled for the Sunday front page. Back in Madrid, Mira returned the original manifesto to the evidence vault, locking herself inside with the pages. She inhaled, summoning every fear. That her career would implode, that her father's legacy would rot, that she would be labeled hysterical. The pages quivered, ink unfurling like tendrils. Sentences fractured and reassembled into a single line repeated across all 46 sheets. Debt paid, blood hears light. She exhaled raggedly. Tears carved hot lanes down her cheeks. "Is it over?" she whispered. The vellum fluttered as though caught in a wind that didn't exist. Then the letters slowly reverted to their original opaque prose. She waited an hour, testing multiple emotional cues. Grief, anger, joy. Nothing shifted. The text was frozen. Sunday dawned the color of tarnished steel. Mira stood on her balcony, gripping the newspaper whose headline read, "Revealed. Secret Files. Link, late magistrate to Benavent murder." Her phone detonated with calls from colleagues, reporters, legal counsel. She switched it off and faced the city. For a moment she expected to see words scrawled across the horizon, the manifesto's final verdict. Instead, she felt silence profound, voluminous, the kind that lives beneath language. That night, Layla knocked on her office door. "They found something when they exhumed Benavente," she said. "A missing rib bone, fits perfectly with the fragment you surrendered." Layla paused, then added, "So, the case is solved." Mira thought about solved, how the word tastes differently depending on whether you seek justice or absolution. She looked at the empty space on her desk where the manifesto had rested. She felt lighter, but also flayed, like a page scraped clean. Layla left. Evening sun spilled across the wall, illuminating decades of student scribbles. Mira opened her notebook to a blank page. Her pen hovered. For the first time since the ordeal began, she wondered whether the ink would obey only her. She wrote a single sentence. "Language remembers." Nothing rearranged itself. The letters stayed loyal, silent. Hers. She closed the notebook, switched off the light, and stepped into the corridor. The air smelled of old paper and possibilities, both infinite, both finally her own to name.